Hey everyone, it's Mike Camber at Flipnerd.com. Welcome back for this episode of the Flipnerd.com Expert Interview Show, where I meet with experts and really just awesome people, entrepreneurs from across the real estate investing industry to help you learn and grow and to kind of introduce my network to you. And I'm blessed to have today's guest. This is episode number 304, and my guest is Jay Massey. Jay is a real estate investor, an author, educator. He's a fellow podcaster. He's a host of the Cashflow Diary podcast and much more. He's a regular contributor on our other podcast, the REI Classroom, which we appreciate. And if you don't know Jay, you're going to love today's show. And if you do know him, then you're going to love it too. So Jay really has an inspiring story of really hardship to success. And once you get to know him a little bit, you're going to recognize that he has an incredible work ethic, and it's something that should definitely be admired, and hopefully it infects you a little bit today to learn his story. For those of you that have been watching the show for this year, we break it apart into two segments now. So the first part we're going to talk about, Jay and I were talking before we started recording today about just work ethic and what causes entrepreneurs to work so hard even after they've achieved success that is kind of beyond what their initial expectations were. When it's not about eating anymore, or surviving, or even about money anymore, why do you keep taking risks and keep trying to double and triple down and 10x everything when it's not about the money? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. That's going to be the first part. And in the second part, the taking action segment, Jay is really going to kind of get into the nuts and bolts, and we're going to dive into some deep discussion on how to take your business to the next level and how to stay motivated and all the things that we all face. So let's go ahead and dive in. Jay, how are you, my friend?
So far, so good. Excited to be here. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, I just mentioned to you, obviously, you were on the show before, but that was about 170 episodes ago. This is show 304, and that was show 136. So it's funny that, how fast it goes by.
I know. You don't even realize it. You just keep your head down and working. And that's a testament to your work ethic right there.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, look, I just told you this, sometimes, for those that are listening out there, the story of my life generally is that I'm kind of always winging it. So we don't always necessarily know what we're going to talk about at a show, and we spend some time visiting and talking about what we're going to talk about. And this idea came up of just talking about work ethic, and so many people out there that you kind of think like, when is enough enough? Like, why do they keep working so hard? Because they don't have to anymore. And I just thought that would make for an interesting show. And again, because I admire Jay's work ethic, because I see we're in some common groups on Facebook, and I see him, wee hours of the night asking questions and answering stuff. And I'm like, man, this guy is like the Energizer Bunny. So that's kind of how this came about. And so we're going to kind of dive into that. But before we get started, Jay, why don't you tell folks your background and kind of how you got started, and a little bit about you.
Sure. First, let me say no matter what you hear, just understand that what it comes down to is that we all start somewhere, and whatever we were gifted with at the beginning, meaning the challenges that you currently are facing, that is your gift. And I know it may not feel like a gift today, but it becomes a gift over time. And mine is no different. Everybody's given something. Mine's not better or worse. It's just what happened. A few years ago, what happened is my wife and I, when my wife is pregnant, she has a condition known as hyperemesis. It simply means she can't eat or drink, and while pregnant, which was, scary. So going through that was stressful. And what I did one day is I went to go play volleyball, landed on a guy's head while trying to spike the ball, and punctured my lung. And so then I couldn't walk and talk because I have asthma. So the situation, if you will, I was a self-employed financial planner at the time, unable to walk and talk. My wife is unable to eat or drink, which means there's no income. That's really what it is. And we got an abject lesson in, if you don't work, you don't eat. We didn't understand the mechanics of how to have assets bring us income. Right. And that was the challenge. But that's, she's got 2 degrees. That's what she was taught to do, is you go to school, get good grades, get a job, college dropout. So that's why I was part of the reason I was headed down the path that I was anyway, is because I didn't really want more college. It wasn't what I wanted to do. And we were now in this situation. Friend says, hey, you should do real estate. I'm like, yeah, we have a credit score of 398, buddy, and barely $75. How's that going to work? Yeah. And he says that I didn't ask you. He was one of the first people who wasn't concerned about my pedigree and what I already had. He didn't care about what I had. He wanted to know where I wanted to go. And that's one of the first lessons that I learned is focus on where you want to go, not what you have or don't have specifically to get there. All that stuff can get worked out. And that's exactly what we did. I mastered the ways of being able to buy all kinds of property using none of my own money or credit. Then I learned to raise capital. We started with single family houses. We've transitioned since then from single family houses to apartment buildings. We now have commercial as well as a cell phone tower. So, and that's kind of what we do. We raise the capital and we go out there and buy stuff. And then over time, what has happened is that people said, how did you do that? And I had to learn how to teach people how I did it.
How to share your message, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to do any of those things.
Yeah.
So that's where the podcast, YouTube, and all this other stuff came from.
Yeah, yeah. What's interesting is I know you know people like this because I do, is you know people that started real estate investing or tried to get in, and they had plenty of resources. They had access to capital. They had assets to kind of die for relative to some people or relative to your situation. And then they failed. So it's not having those assets. It's really kind of having that fire in your belly, right?
Yeah, and not only that. I mean, I'll take a much more famous example from a long time ago. If you just think about the airplane, and everybody remembers the Wright brothers. Right. Everybody remembers them. No one knows, or very few people know, that there was another company developing and working on the airplane or that concept at the same time.
Right.
And it was by a very accomplished individual who had the resources of lots of corporations and dollars and manpower and all these things. Yet two brothers in the middle of North Carolina, nowhere North Carolina, figure out how to take flight.
Right. With
none of those advantages or perceived advantages. And that's the thing. It's not about the resources that you think you have. Oh, I'm surrounded by all these resources, therefore I'm going to be successful. Absolutely wrong. I've run into now a number of people who have tons of money, but are afraid it's going to go away because they don't know how to get it back. Yeah. They did, even if it did. So they lack the skill sets of being able to create value. And that's really where it comes down to. It's more about the skill sets to create value, not, hey, I got an extra $1 million, so I'm good now. I'm going to totally tear this thing up. That's not what's going to make you successful in any particular endeavor.
Yeah, and even for people that, that are doing well in this business or have done well in real estate, even if you get smarter, you start to find ways to, like you said, kind of duplicate yourself. You find processes or systems or assistants or virtual assistants or whatever it might be to help you do more things. But in my experience, you still have to have that hustle. You still have to be willing to get down and get dirty every once in a while, because, also in this business, we're all small businesses. So you generally don't have a bunch of redundancy, right? You have a key player somewhere. Something happens to them, it's going to be you, right? You're getting in and you're doing whatever you got to do, right?
Yeah, I heard someone say, don't be the general that doesn't know how to fire a gun, because that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
There's very few roles in my organization that I could not fulfill, very few. Now, obviously, I don't do my own books because that skill set just skipped me completely. But there are very few roles within the organization that I couldn't do myself if I had to. That doesn't mean I'm good at them. Right. It just means I could do them. I could fill in. I could get something done. I don't like doing paperwork, right. But I could get it done.
Yeah.
And those are the things that you learn over time. But the thing that's missing, in my opinion, for most people, is a true understanding of why they need and should actually put forth all of their effort. Oftentimes we're sold this bill of goods, I'll call it, that says, go to school, get good grades, get a job, and something, be it the government or a company or a 401k, is going to take care of you.
Yeah.
And until you're faced with the reality that that's not quite the full story, you don't have a reason to do anything about it, and you feel okay. And therefore you do nothing. You don't try to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. My wife and I both went to a top MBA program. She worked on Wall Street. We had all these things. And then you kind of look back and you're like, None of that really helps me now with with what I do. And it's tough. It's tough, and I think it's tough for the person that doesn't have those things to understand for a while that those aren't advantages necessarily, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to deal with this. My CFO and I, she's, credentialed and graduate and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the few people, I kind of chuckle because I'm one of the few people in the company that actually doesn't have a degree and only went to high school. So didn't graduate college. So the thing is that I think is funny is I had to go through that same transition process because she would often tell me, Jay, just because that person has a degree that I could be negotiating with, that doesn't necessarily give them an advantage. It doesn't mean they're better at this, that, or the other than you. Yeah. And you just don't see it. And you think that piece of paper actually means something. Let me tell you. And she would go on these, diatribes and tell me why that it wasn't necessarily an advantage. And my wife has had to do the same thing. I mean, she's got 2 degrees. So it's okay. I get it now, but I didn't get it at the beginning because kindergarten through 12th grade, you're told that this is how this is supposed to be. This is the way the world works. If you want to eat, you better go to, you better do these things. And here I am unsuited for these things. Not that I don't have the ability to work. I have the ability to work. It's just an environment where my genius doesn't shine. And we try to conform all individuals through this thing. And we say, if you can't conform to this way of generating value, you are worthless. And unfortunately, we believe it and I think sometimes it's simply because we don't know that there's another way. And that's what you're doing with Flip Nerd is, hey, there's another way. It's going to be just as much work, if not more so. You're going to experience just as much resistance, if not more so. However, on the other end, you're going to be way more satisfied with the result. Yeah.
Hey, I want to start talking shortly here about just the entrepreneurial mindset and some of the stuff that we teed up front. But while we're kind of on this topic, why don't you talk about your thoughts a little bit on, I think one of the challenges when people go through the traditional education system, I did all those things too. In fact, I'm the first person in my family to go to college at all, and let alone grad school, and I kept seeing that as a way to something better is kind of what what I saw, which and it was fine. I mean, I don't want to steal. Sure. I don't want to talk too much about my story, but it didn't work out, So let's just say I'm in a better place now, and I wish I had discovered this 10 years earlier, right? Like doing this on your own. But talk about some skill sets that people that maybe listening to this and thinking, I don't know if I could do those things. I don't know if I could be a successful real estate investor. Some skill sets that are tangible that are not necessarily from a university. So I'll give you an example. One thing that I think is a critical skill for everybody to have, irregardless of what you do, is some level of salesmanship. If you're comfortable talking to people and selling and teaching and things like that, then it's like there's a lot of people that come up through one silo. I'm not going to call anybody out here, but you kind of lose your job, or that becomes irrelevant because of technology or whatever. And it's like, what are you going to do? Unless you have some common skill set that you can say, I've never done this, but I can apply what I know from this. But maybe you can share your thoughts on some kind of tangible skill sets that people should learn one way or another.
Well, you've already said the S word, and if they didn't get scared with sales, so I don't know what else I could say that's going to, but that is definitely one of them. Yeah. But additionally to that, the skill sets of knowing how to lead and communicate and inspire are absolutely critical, because most of the time, the vision that you want to achieve, the vision that the entrepreneur has, is well outside of their ability to achieve on their own. And you therefore, by default, need a team, which means they have needs. You've got to be able to master all of those things, which means you need to learn how to listen. It's the most overlooked skill set today, is listening. And you think you know how to listen. Yeah, you may have heard people, but did you hear? Did you listen? Did you actively participate and try to understand exactly where they're coming from? All of these things are combined to make an entrepreneur. This is why, regardless of what you've done in the past, for example, moms are they give themselves so little credit, but they could be some of the greatest entrepreneurs. Why? I love it when a mom tells me I'm not good at sales. I'm like, okay, really? Have you ever gotten your kids to go to bed on time? Yes. Great. Then you're great at sales. Have you ever gotten them to eat a vegetable? Yes. Then you are really, really good at sales. I mean, have they ever thrown a tantrum in the middle of the store and you actually handle that situation successfully? Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, yeah, we've got it. That's my point. Right. It's the same skill sets. We're just talking bigger babies called adults in this particular case. And you're still trying to take this person to this objective, and at that moment, the objective is to stop crying, eat your vegetables, go to bed so that I can finally rest, all those types of things. It's no different. You have them. We just have to put them all together in sequence in this particular context and therefore derive value from it.
And more often than not, those skill sets are probably more useful as an entrepreneur, right? Than going into, it's harder to kind of put that on a resume. Like I've done these things. I've dealt with tantrums in a store with my kids. I figured out how to make a diaper from a cardboard box if I had to, whatever you had to do, it's like, well, you can't put that on a resume, but it's like, hey, maybe you're perfectly suited to be an entrepreneur because like you said, all the skills that you use as a parent and just unique problem solving, right?
A very unique problem solving. I mean, if you've ever been like, this happened to us once. We were at Disneyland, and my son was, because you check before you get in the line. Do you have to go potty?
Yeah, because we're not going to wait here for 2 hours.
Right, because once we're in the line, we're in the line. There is no it doesn't work any other way. And you probably already know where this story goes. But the point is, we get through that situation and we figure out a way to not only still get him to the bathroom after we're near the front of the line, but to still get back in line in place. Now, it seems like how is that valuable? Well, what happens when a deal goes south? What happens when something doesn't go as expected?
Right.
How did you respond to that? How did you react to that? It's the same skill set, just that in that situation, one, I just saved myself some having to wash some clothing that versus being able to create value with clean, safe, affordable housing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for joining us up to this point in the show. The second half of our show is restricted to only FlipNerd Pro and Elite members and only accessible on FlipNerd.com. If you're not a Pro or Elite member yet, you can upgrade your account in about 1 minute by visiting FlipNerd.com/upgrade. Depending on membership level, you'll get access to off-market properties real time, including real-time email and text alerts for new properties listed in your market. You'll get access to hundreds of full-length expert interviews, and Elite members get access to the FlipNerd Lab, which includes detailed masterclass trainings, 2 live webinars a month where you can interact with leaders in the industry, and access to our Elite Mastermind group, where you can interact with hundreds of the top real estate investors in America. Build relationships with those that are actually operating successful real estate investing businesses. By visiting flipnerd.com/upgrade, you'll learn much more about our membership options. And once you've upgraded your membership, come on back and listen to the rest of this show.